Let's look at the four poetic texts that ascribe to YHVH a southern origin. Deuteronomy 33. He said, YHVH came from Sinai. For them he shone forth from Seir. He was resplendent from Mount Paran. He arrived at Meribah of Kodesh, from his south toward the slopes for them. Let's start with Meribah Kodesh. The Hebrew expression Meribah Kodesh is difficult to understand. Some translate the Masoretic text as he has come from the holy Merites, which really does not make much sense. The Semitic poetic figure, which is called parallelism of members, would suggest that this expression has a geographical meaning. The Septuagint takes Kodesh as a proper name so as to read with the myriads of Kodesh. So, just to comment on the difficult verse in Deuteronomy 33. But in general, he said, YHVH came from Sinai. For them he shone forth from Seir. He was resplendent from Mount Paran. He arrived at Meribah of Kodesh, from his south toward the slopes for them. Then in the book of Judges, in a song celebrating a military victory of the tribes of Yahweh, we read Judges 5. YHVH, when you went forth out of Seir, when you marched out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled, the heavens also dripped, also the clouds dripped water. The mountains melted at the presence of YHVH. This Sinai, because of the presence of YHVH, the God of Israel. A very similar affirmation is to be found in Psalm 68. O God, when you came forth at the head of your people, when you advanced over the arid land, the earth trembled, yes, the sky quaked before God, this Sinai, before God, the God of Israel. The chariots of God are counted by 20s of thousands, by thousands and by thousands. YHVH is with them. The Sinai is in the sanctuary. And then finally, chapters 3 of the book attributed to Habakkuk contains a poetic text that takes up similar ideas. We read, God comes from Teman. The Holy One comes from Mount Paran. His splendor covers the sky. His praise fills the earth. The mountains see you and tremble. A stream of water passed. The deep gave forth its voice. The heaven raised up its thanks. So, Deuteronomy 33, Judges 5, Psalm 68, Habakkuk 3. These four texts are linked by the presence of the same themes and the same affirmation that the deity YHVH comes from the south, even if they differ slightly in details. These four texts are linked by the presence of the same themes and the same affirmation that YHVH, the God YHVH, the deity YHVH, comes from the south. All of these passages are to be found in poetic contexts. So Deuteronomy 33 is part of a psalm that records the blessings of Moshe on the tribes of Israel before his death. Judges 5 is the opening of the Canticle of Deborah, a song of war or victory. Psalm 68 is a hymn celebrating divine intervention in a war, and then Habakkuk 3 is a psalm about war. Now let's look at Judges 5 and Psalm 68. Let's look at the parallel, and then let me do some clarifications. When we look at Judges 5 and then Psalm 68, we see that the two texts are especially close to each other. As you can see from the parallels. Judges 5, Psalm 68. If you pause it, you can see that they are very close. The most obvious difference between the two passages lies in the fact that the tetragrammaton, YHVH, does not appear in Psalm 68. Though they are especially close to each other, we notice that the tetragrammaton that we see in Judges 5 does not appear in Psalm 68. Why is that? We have in scholarship something called the Elohistic Psalter. The Elohistic Psalter is found from Psalms 42 to Psalms 83. What is it? At some point in the course of a series of reworkings of these Psalms, Psalms 42 to 83, the editors gradually began replacing the name YHVH with Elohim. Why would they do that? Well, it's either in the interest of universalism or maybe to avoid having to pronounce the tetragrammaton YHVH during the recitations of these psalms. But I think this substitution of Elohim for YHVH may possibly be the result of a theological decision of a group of Levites, the Asaphites. They collected and edited this collection of psalms. The number of these psalms, there's 42 of them. And I think the number 42 may have probably also played a role in this organization. It is possible, according to certain experts, that the Elohistic Psalters contained 42 occurrences of the Tetragrammaton. Now, the number 42 is unique because in the Talmud, one finds the idea that the divine name consists of 42 letters, which probably refers to different ways of naming the God of Israel. In Mesopotamia, the number 42 is often used to divide long hymns. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there are 42 divinities and 42 sins that is necessary to avoid. In the Hebrew Bible and also the New Testament, the number 42 is reputed to be unlucky. If you want a good article to read about this number 42, this is one that you should go for. Joel S. Burnett, 42 Songs for Elohim, an ancient Near Eastern organizing principle in the shaping of the Elohistic Psalter. So this is what was done, replacing Elohim for Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. But when we come to Psalm 68 verses 9, it still retains traces of this replacement, where the Hebrew text as we have it repeats Elohim, Elohim of Israel, which makes no sense. It is clear that this originally read Yahweh, the God of Israel. So if we put the name Yahweh back into Psalm 68 in place of Elohim, the two texts are in large part identical. Moreover, while this argument is strong, moreover, the Tetragrammaton Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh has in fact been retained in other places in the Psalms. So, just a side note. Now, in both texts, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh comes out to engage in battle with his enemies. In both of them, the author first addresses Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in the second person, then speaks about him in the third person. We find in both texts the same upheaval of the heavens and the earth brought about by his manifestation as a war god. There is also the same way of referring to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh by putting his name in opposition to the strange phrase Ze Sanai. We shall return later to the meaning of this expression, but I'm trying to show you the parallels. The most important difference between the two passages is that the text of the book of Judges describes Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh as coming out of Seir, which is Edom, whereas Psalm 68 refers to a location described as arid place. Arid place. Okay. Judges 5 here contains the older version of the text, which is taken over and reworked by the author of Psalm 68. We know that Judges 5, in its primitive form, is often considered to be one of the oldest texts in the Hebrew Bible. So even though Psalm 68 takes over and rework Judges 5, it replaces Seir, or coming from Edom, with arid places. In Judges 5 verses 4, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh comes from the territory of Edom, which is put in parallel to Seir. Now, the Hebrew word Seir means hairy, and when it is used as a geographical term, it refers to the interior of the territory of Edom, which was forested. That is why they say hairy. However, in the Bible, the names Edom and Seir are often used as synonyms. Sinai is also considered part of this territory because YHVH, as we have seen in Psalm 68, is put in opposition to Zeir Sinai, which is rendered He is Sinai. So YHVH would be the divinity of Sinai. The expression He of Sinai would be an epithet used of YHVH. Now, talking about Sinai, the original location of Mount Sinai remains a mystery. When you pay close attention to the mentions of it by the biblical writers, one has the impression that the authors of the Bible themselves did not have a very clear idea about this. I can focus on this statement if anyone is interested in it, maybe in class or something. Okay. But Judges 4:5 seems to imagine it as located somewhere in Edom, not in the Sinai Peninsula. Like I said, I can focus more on this if anyone is interested. Now, Deuteronomy 33 places Mount Paran in parallel with Seir. He said, YHVH came from Sinai. From there he shone forth from Seir. He was resplendent from Mount Paran. So Deuteronomy 33 places Mount Paran in parallel with Seir. The word Paran is used in the Hebrew Bible in different contexts, and its precise location or localization is impossible. The biblical name Paran, which in most texts refers to a desert, but in the two texts in Deuteronomy and in Habakkuk, it designates a mountain. So the odd expression, Mount Paran, which is nowhere attested in the Bible except in the two parallel texts of Deuteronomy 33 and Habakkuk 3, indicates that what we have here is probably a learned speculation about the location of Sinai and not a trace of an ancient tradition, because it's only in these two poetic texts that we see a Mount Paran. Only here. But the word Paran is used in the Hebrew text, and its precise localization, like I said, is impossible. In the Bible, Paran refers to a desert, but it's only in these two places, Deuteronomy 33 and Habakkuk 3, that it refers to a mountain. Habakkuk 3 locates the origin of YHVH in Paran, but without mentioning Sinai. Here, Mount Paran is placed in parallel to Teman. The word Teman is attested in Genesis 36 as the name of a person or a clan in the genealogy of Edom. In other biblical texts, it seems to designate a locality or territory in Edom, or is even used as a parallel expression for Edom. We go outside the biblical text and we have an inscription from Kuntulet Ajud, a place that we would study thoroughly in this series. This inscription from Kuntulet Ajud mentions, in addition to YHVH of Samaria, a YHVH of Teman, which might simply mean YHVH of the south. However, the word Teman in the first instance simply means south in general. Then the south as the designation of a particular geographical area. So it would be YHVH of the land of the south. So it could mean YHVH of the south or YHVH of the land of the south. So in Habakkuk 3, Teman may refer to the south in general, or to the Negev, or to the territory of the Edomites. What have we seen so far? We can summarize the conclusions to be drawn from these four texts about the origin of YHVH as follows. YHVH is taken to be located in the south, in the territory of the Edomites, or more generally, in a territory situated southeast of Judah. This is what we have. These are the conclusions that we can draw. It's all pointing to the south. It is very possible that these four poetic passages reflect an old tradition according to which YHVH is a divinity associated with a mountain in the desert to the east or to the west of Arabah. Deuteronomy 33, Judges 5, Psalm 68, Habakkuk 3 retain the ancient memory trace of a YHVH localized in the south, localized in the south, localized in the south. There's a reason why I repeated it 4 times. When we look at the character of this deity as well, from these 4 texts, what do we find? Deuteronomy 33, Judges 5, Psalm 68, Habakkuk 3 emphasize 2 aspects of YHVH. He is a warrior god and a storm god. It is then understandable that such a god, such a deity, would be worshipped by groups living in arid regions and finding themselves frequently in military conflict with other groups or with the power of Egypt. It all points to the south. It all points to the territory of Edom. No wonder the Bible tells us Moshe meets the deity where? In the south, specifically in Midian. We would turn towards Midian in our next session.